Hey everyone, Chili B here again. Nice to see you all. Today we're diving into the history of the Ethlizards by looking through past LIPs. Now that might sound really boring, especially if you're not into governance, but I think by going through this, you'll get a massive appreciation for Ethlizards and it might even make you a bit more bullish if that's possible. Not financial advice. It's never financial advice. A quick reminder, if you're not sure what LIPs are, they're lizard improvement proposals, and they're just a way for the DAO to vote on what changes, major changes, they want to happen to the DAO. I've only been active in Ethlizards for the past couple of months, so to prepare and research for this video, I read back in the Discord for months and months, not the whole thing obviously. But in doing that, I might have gotten a few things wrong or missed some important information or misread things. So if I have gotten anything wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments below. I'd really appreciate that actually. We're looking at LIPs today, but there was actually a time before LIPs. And that was when Ethlizards was just an alpha sharing community and their NFTs were just the Genesis lizards. But around the end of 2021, there was discussion around a V2 lizard and maybe even turning Ethlizards into a lizard gaming guild. That led to the minting of the V2 lizards, which happened in Feb 2022. And with that, we entered the LIP era of Ethlizards history. And as a little bonus, here's a picture of an Ethlizards 1.5 that I got from Triton. It was a bit trippy because it looks like an Ethlizards V2, but not quite. And Triton explained that it's basically the head of a V2 with the body of a V1. But anyway, LIP1 was to purchase an NFT world for the Lizard Vault. The main things to know for this LIP was that it was really an attempt to find like a home base or a place to chill for Ethlizards in the metaverse. And the proposal was basically to buy an NFT world for up to 16 ETH. In the Discord, there was a lot of discussion about why we're going for NFT world and not for a different project. And I think in the end that reflected in the results, which were pretty tight as far as Ethlizard LIPs go. The against vote won narrowly. And if you notice the start and end dates of this LIP, Feb 22 and Feb 24, I think it was pretty lucky that for whatever reason it was voted against, because Feb 22 was the literal top of NFT world and Feb 24 was not too much lower than that. So if it had passed and we had bought it, we would have bought basically at the top and been holding it all the way down. So LIP1 was rejected by vote, and looking back, by chance, by skill, by something else, I think we dodged a bullet. I've made plenty of poor NFT purchases in the past, so I'm glad the DAO managed to escape this one and save that 16 ETH for something else. LIP2 is a bit weird. I can't find any trace of it. There is a proposal 2, which became LIP3, so I have no idea what happened to LIP2. But LIP3 was really influential. It was to become a Gamefi investment DAO. So this one was authored by Kieran, and the aim was to become the largest investment DAO in Gamefi by getting access to seed and pre-seed investments. So that's basically what we are now. And the vote passed with an overwhelming majority, 99.34%, and Ethlizards, as we know it now, was born. It's interesting to see how much of an influence this has had over our NFT price as well. So here, where the proposal was written in Discord, so not the snapshot vote, but the proposal, you can't really see it, but there was a 50% pump on the day that Kieran wrote the proposal. And then when LIP3 opens for voting, you can see it's grown a bit. And then post the vote, it basically rockets up. Price isn't everything for an NFT project, but I think this shows how much more confidence we have in Ethlizards now that we've got a clear direction as a Gamefi DAO. So LIP3 basically changed the whole direction of the project, and in my opinion is the most significant LIP in Ethliz's history. Looking back to our timeline, our pre-LIP era was basically when Ethlizards was an alpha group, just sharing some trades between each other. When V2 was minted, we became a degen DAO, and we dodged a bullet, I think, of buying NFT world with a bit of luck, maybe a bit of skill, I don't really know. And then when LIP3 passed, we entered our current era, our current iteration of Ethlizards, which is as a Gamefi DAO. LIP4 is the establishment of DAO guidelines. This LIP also establishes team payment structure, but I think the most important part of it is actually the DAO guidelines and procedures. So if we head to the guidelines section, it says, any member holding an Ethlizards has the ability to participate in Ethlizards governance by either creating proposals, giving feedback to proposals, or just simply voting. And further down here, it specifies how a person can present proposals. I won't go through it in the text, I'll show you in a diagram. It'll be much easier, I think. So to start, someone, any member of the DAO, can write a proposal and chuck it in the proposals channel. I think the actual proposals channel is not able to be written in by everyone, but you can throw it in the governance proposals channel, and I assume the mod team, who are great, will be able to move it where it's meant to go. The point is, don't let not being able to write in that channel stop you from putting a proposal forward. If you have an idea, I would love to read your proposal. So a proposal's written, and then in the wider Discord, it's discussed, it's refined, and support is gained for it for a minimum of 3 days. After those 3 days, if the person who brings up the proposal thinks there's enough support, they can go to Snapshot and create a preliminary LIP. So the prelim LIP is just a vote to see if the DAO is happy for this iteration of the LIP to go ahead for a full vote, or if it needs more work or something like that. If it passes quorum, which is 500 people or 500 votes, and if the vote passes, the team has to rework the LIP a little bit, taking into consideration legal issues and all those sorts of things. Then, once the team's reworked it, trying to keep in the spirit of the original LIP and not changing things unnecessarily, the final LIP goes to vote on Snapshot. And if it passes, it gets enacted by the DAO. The team also, at its own judgment, could skip the prelim LIP process and go straight to an LIP if it feels that's necessary or beneficial for the DAO for any reason. So if you have any proposal ideas, this is how you can get it in. This is how you can get people hearing about it and voting on it and actually change the DAO. So the important thing about LIP4 is not so much the procedure itself, but the fact that we have a procedure means that every lizard has an opportunity and a way to have their ideas and innovations heard by the wider DAO. And who knows what great ideas are out there. If you have one, I really encourage you to share it. LIP5 was about establishing V1 Genesis utility. So the V2 lizards are actually a separate collection than the Genesis V1 lizards. When the V2 lizards were created with the ability to vote in the DAO, it says here it was promised to the V1 holders that their NFT would gain additional utility at some point in the future. And so LIP5 was basically a fulfillment on that promise. And the LIP had 4 options. A, to not integrate. B, to integrate with a 1x staking reward. C, to integrate with a 2x staking reward. Or D, to integrate with a 3x staking reward. And I think the votes here are really interesting to look at. And scrolling back to the top, we can see option C was the one that won, which is the one that gives them a 2x staking reward. What's really interesting is that option A, which was to not include them, and option D, which was to give them a 3x staking reward, was basically not voted for. And that's really interesting because the biggest lizard holders also hold Genesis lizards. So it's in their best interest to vote for the 3x staking reward. But none of these top 4, so these top 4 definitely have Genesis Lizards. And none of them voted for the 3x staking option. And actually 2 of them, Lizard and Weed.eth, voted for just the 1x staking option. And the others just voted for the 2x staking option, which was the one that passed. And thinking about what that means, it tells us that the original team was very trustworthy. 0x Spicy Sauce and co. made a promise to the original Ethlizards, and they delivered on that in a really timely fashion. And 2, something that makes me really bullish, is that we've got whales in Ethlizards, but they're not greedy. And I think that's really different than most whales. Just the top 4 whales could have just about passed a vote to have a 3x staking reward. But out of the top 4 whales, half of them voted for a 2x reward and half of them voted for a 1x reward. So we've got some really non-greedy whales at the top. And that's great for any project. And I think that's very rare in a lot of projects. LIP6 was about pre-council investments. When we became a Gamefi investment DAO, we implemented a system where the investment council would choose which investments to invest in. But before this council was voted in, there were already opportunities to make investments. And so LIP6 was to give the team the ability to invest without the council, just temporarily. And you can see this vote passed with 100% of the lizards saying yes. So it's interesting to see that the DAO was flooded with opportunities before we were even fully established. Maybe actually to the point where we were overwhelmed. So we weren't actually ready to take them on yet, but they were all coming in and we didn't want to miss them. But the DAO came together and we made a way for us to be able to vote before the investment council was established. Those are all really good signs. LIP7 was the Ethlizards Council voting system. I won't spend much time on this, but it was an LIP about changing the way that we vote for who's in the council. So instead of only being able to vote for one person, with no matter how many lizards you have, it would enable you to split your lizards amongst different votes. I'm not going to overthink this one. I'm just assuming that people had so many good options that they wanted to vote for more than one person. Or it could just be that we're really non-committal. After LIP7, the council vote happened, and then we got to LIP8. LIP8 was a proposal to deactivate the bridge for the Genesis lizards that gave them utility in the Ethlizards v2 world. So that was voting and staking. I want to draw your attention to 2 things. One is that this vote didn't pass quorum. So in the end, it meant nothing. And that's because of a lot of our whale lizards didn't vote. And it seems like if our whales don't vote, we tend not to pass quorum. So it's really important for you guys to get out there because we can have a bunch of LIPs that don't pass if our whales happen to not be able to vote for a week or something. Second thing to pay attention to is that most lizards voted for no. And I think this LIP is secretly very bullish. I'm going to explain in a separate video because I want to focus on that. It won't be a very long video, but I think it's worth giving it its own time. So I'll just leave it at that. LIP8, secretly bullish. And if you're an OG lizard that hasn't migrated yet, get over to ogbridge.ethlizards.io. I'll link it in the description and I'll link the instructions that come from the Ethlizards directly as well. So a quick wrap up before we continue. In LIP3, we found our identity as a Gamefi DAO. LIP4, we codified how members of the DAO can make very real contributions to the DAO. LIP5, we honoured our past promises to the Genesis lizards, which was really important, I think. In LIP6, we were overwhelmed with opportunity, but we made a way for that to work. In LIP7, we clarified how to vote for the council. Not going to overthink that one. In between 7 and 8, we established our council. LIP8, I'm secretly bullish on, and you'll have to wait for the next video to find out why. Okay, on to LIP9, which actually didn't pass the prelim stage, but it was a proposal to overturn the current staking mechanism, which was set up in LIP3 when we became a Gamefi DAO. So to get details on this LIP, we actually need to go over to the Ethlizards forum site, which has the details and discussion on this LIP. First thing to notice is that this was authored mostly by Cryptish, who is a really active member of Ethlizards. Not a member of the team or anything as far as I know, but just super active. And the proposal is basically to move from what was established in LIP3, that Ethlizards would need to stake their lizards to receive revenue distribution, over to a model where Ethlizards would receive profits just by holding an Ethlizard at the time of a particular snapshot. And the proposal's pretty detailed. It goes over some interesting arguments. One of them was that the floor price by not staking might possibly be higher than the floor price with staking. If you're interested, you can head over to the LIP9 and find the link to this. And he also goes over some counterpoints to the common assumptions that staking leads to things like a bump up in floor price, or it aligns the holders with the purposes of the DAO. So it's a pretty interesting read to get some counterpoints to some commonly assumed things. So on August the 5th, the vote passed quorum, so 540 out of 500, and the clear majority was yes at 89%. But LIP9 never made it to the full LIP vote. And that's because 3 days later, on the 8th of August, after some pretty heavy discussions in Discord, Kieran and Tyler Scott Ward kind of jumped in and said that removing staking from a legal perspective regarding revenue distribution, if we remove staking, we're possibly crossing a line, or very likely to be crossing a line. So Kieran's obviously done a whole bunch of research into the legal implications of revenue distribution and staking for Illuvium already, and he's applying that knowledge to Ethlizards here as an advisor. And although there's no cut and dry rules when it comes to crypto in general and to staking and to revenue distribution, we really want to be setting ourselves up to have the best possibility of succeeding as a DAO. And fortunately or unfortunately, part of that is setting ourselves up to not cross any legal lines. So prelim LIP9 never made it to LIP9, but this is still a pretty bullish event in my mind because of two things. This is a perfect example of a DAO-driven change. So Cryptish isn't an advisor of Ethlizards, he's not part of the team. He's just an active member of Ethlizards DAO, and he put up a really big and consequential LIP, and it passed. But then this is also a perfect example of advisors stepping in to make sure we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, because there's stuff that as members of Ethlizards we just don't know about. And that's why we trust and we need a really good advisory board. And Kieran stepping in, even though it might not have been too pleasant for Cryptish, who put in so much work to get this happening, it was a really important thing for Kieran to do, and it is basically his job as an advisor. So Prelim 9 passed, but it didn't make it to LIP 9. But this is exactly the balance that Web3 is trying to achieve, I think. If we defer to the experts all the time and ignore the community, then we lose out on all the creativity and all the energy that the collective mind and imagination of the DAO has. But if we totally ignore the experts, especially in their domain of expertise, we're going to learn the hard way the lessons that the experts are trying to teach us, and we might not survive those lessons. So this LIP for a single moment was perfect, I think. It showed how the community can drive massive change, and it showed how advisors can stop us from shooting ourselves in the foot. So I really hope to see more of this type of thing. LIP 10 was the proposal to restructure the Ethlizards team. So over on the snapshot page, there's a link to Kmail's Notion site that has the detailed proposal. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong, but I can't get access to that anymore. So I don't know if Kmail's unshared it or something like that. But from memory, what was in the proposal was basically a letter to us from Kieran, from Kmail and James, and from Kakashi, explaining why they want to be part of this team and what they'd add to the team. and then also the proposal from Kieran to restructure the team and how payments and things would work. To sum up the whole LIP from memory, it's that the new team would be K-Mao, James, and Kakashi. K-Mao's the CEO and Solidity dev. James is a full stack dev, and Kakashi would be the operations manager. K-Mao and James are full-time, Kakashi is part-time. And then also the old team would be bought out by Kieran, and he'll do that from his own pocket. So the new team would come in without a cost to the DAO. The old team would receive fair compensation, and that would be no impact to the DAO as well. And this is the second time Kieran's done something like this. The first time was in Illuvium, where he paid out everyone who lost anything from the SILV hack. And now he does it again for Ethlizards to try and move us into a new phase. While it doesn't mean objectively that Ethlizards will survive, it does mean that Kieran's got really high hopes for Ethlizards, and that maybe he sees something in Ethlizards that he sees in Illuvium as well. And being a big Illuvium fan myself, I think that's super bullish. But there were worries expressed on Discord about this change. One main worry was that it was being pushed too fast. If we flip back to the snapshot page, we can see that the vote only lasted for 1 day, so August 30th to August 31st. Comparing that to LIP8, which had 3 days, LIP7, which had 3 days, LIP6, which had 3 days, you can see why that's a concern. Kieran clarified that it's possible to extend it if we need to, but the team that was leaving actually wanted to do it quite quickly. I couldn't find the exact reasons why the original team wanted to do it quicker. Maybe it's something to do with Wandering Crypto Wolf going offline for a while. But for whatever reason, the outgoing team wanted it to happen faster than usual. The other main concern going around Discord were, what is the outgoing team's thoughts on this? Are they doing this begrudgingly, or are they all on board? Kieran again replied, I pick Kieran's messages because he tends to be a pretty straight talker, so it's easy to get a clear picture of what's going on in one message. But anyway, Kieran replies, team's fully supportive, no bad feelings. And he compliments the outgoing team by saying that they got us to this position, they built a platform, and now we're building a rocket to take off. And from the outgoing team's responses on Discord, it really did seem that they were on board. I read through a lot of Discord messages prepping for this episode, and I didn't really see any reason to think that the team was putting on a front. Here's a message from 0x Spicy Sauce on the day of the vote saying, these new devs are next level, so looking forward to this. And then an announcement from her on the day the vote passed, saying how much she's enjoyed the past 12 months and her well wishes for the new team. So no hint of any animosity there at all, I don't think. On top of that, the very next day, it came our messages saying the transition from the old team to the new team's already done, which is more evidence that the outgoing team was really supportive of it. A transition that fast doesn't happen unless both sides are on board. So this might be the smoothest transition ever. Happened in 1 day, old team and new team both on board, no animosity that I could pick up. So LIP10 shows us that we had a really gracious and mature original team, and we have a really gun now new team ready to take us to the next level. LIP11, I won't spend much time on this because I did a separate video already, but basically it's the temporary replacement of a council member. So post the new team coming in, Wandering Crypto Wolf vacated his investment council seat by his own accord. He was also the community manager in the original team, but basically he left an empty spot on the council investment seat, and this proposal is for K-Mao to step into that seat temporarily until we sort out the new governance council structures. That LIP passed pretty easily, and it was really important for us to keep gaining momentum with this new team. Back to our timeline. With LIP9, we had proof that the Ethlizards DAO can work, and I would love to see more of that. With LIP10, we had the establishment of a new team, and I think with that, we definitely did enter a new era in our timeline. We went from just a Gamefi DAO to I can't think of a better way to describe it, but a AAA GameFi DAO. Not in that we invest in AAA games, but in that the DAO itself is now AAA. I really think it is. I think it has all the ingredients that it needs to really succeed in its purpose. And for me personally, I lurk in lots of other DAOs, but this is the only DAO that I feel compelled to really be a part of. And then finally with LIP11, we've found a way to maintain and build momentum in an interim period. So that I think is a really exciting timeline for any DAO. And I think you can get a feel for that if you go through and read the improvement proposals of other DAOs. At least the ones that I've been a part of. I'm not going to name any names, but I've been a part of a lot of DAOs that have just fallen apart or are just jumping from fad to fad. If you read those improvement proposals, the feeling that I think you'd get is of really sporadic efforts in pretty random directions. But I hope that you see the LIPs of Ethlizards DAO are really different. So what does the history of Ethlizards, viewed from the perspective of LIPs, show us? The first thing that I see is that we're capable of fast iteration and growth. You can see our progress from a pre-LIP era where we were just an alpha group sharing tips with each other. In the space of about 9, maybe 12 months, we've become a AAA GameFi DAO. That's very fast iteration and very fast growth. But admittedly, a lot of that was driven by Kieran. So probably the two most significant LIPs, I think, were LIP3, where we became a GameFi DAO, and LIP10, where we installed a new team. And both of those were driven basically by Kieran. So it's amazing that we have a guy at Kieran's level taking a direct interest in Ethlizards. But I think a really good sign for us to look for in the future is something like what we saw in LIP9, where a member from within the DAO proposes a major change. So I'm already pretty bullish on Ethlizards, but if I see iteration and growth then coming from within Ethlizards itself, either from the team or from DAO members, and major change not having to come from Kieran, that would be a super bullish sign to look out for, and something that I'm hoping to see. The second thing I think it shows is that we're not only iterating and growing quickly, we're iterating and growing in an upward trajectory. So we started off as a bit of a meme, and now we are basically operating as a GameFi VC group at the point where we're just kind of simmering and ready to launch. And again, in the space of 9 or 12 months. And then I think the last thing that the LIPs show, we'll have to wait for next time, because I think it deserves its own video. So I hope you enjoyed that. History's not always fun, but the history of Ethlizards is really interesting. And I hope going through it does two things to you. I hope it makes you want to vote in the future LIPs, because you can see how influential even minor LIPs are. And the second thing is, I hope it helps you appreciate how far Ethlizards has come and how bright of a future Ethlizards has. That's not financial advice. I'll see you next time.